On 8th of May this year, the CS for Transport, James Macharia, was asked by NTV Business journalist Alex Mwangi about the follow-up on the SGR contract that they were to share with the newsrooms. And it didn't quite come out as a straight answer, but this is what he said. And let's listen in.
CS Macharia, maybe the Kenyans are concerned whether about the contract between Kenya and China on the SGR and whether there are strategic assets for the country that were attached to that contract. Is it possible to make it public?
Well, I think we actually did, share with it with some, I can't remember who was there, but we did share with some media houses. It is a matter of fact, we did. But let me also say that you don't have to read that contract. It is a standard contract in terms of what you can get if you sign with any other counterparty. That standard, that contract is not out of the ordinary. I can assure you it is just within the normal international standards and requirements for international contracts. It is standard, and that's all I can say as of now, because a big contract which giving it out, yes, we shared it out, but it contains the standard clauses for any such contract which involves key parties.
I would have played that back, but because I wasn't too sure I understood what he said. But Edwin Okoth, you were there for that press briefing. You were amongst the journalists there. Perhaps I didn't hear him right. Maybe you understood him better when he said this. Do you believe what he says?
I actually heard him when I was there, but now I understand him when you play. He's saying you don't have to read it.
Okay.
And it's just a standard contract, and there's nothing out of ordinary. That is May 2019, right? Yeah. That's over a year. No, it's just 5 months after we reported on that contract. We reported on it in January 13.
Yes.
So he says we don't have to read it. I read it. I read the whole of it. And there's so much that is not standard, and we highlighted that in our story. So it's hard to contain that statement. It's so painful to hear him say that you don't have to read it, and it's just a normal. It's us who are paying for that loan. Why does it get to a level where we don't have to read it? It's like lending you at the bank, and then there are so many terms and conditions, and you are told you don't have to read it, just sign.
Just sign.
And then you realize that you have signed your death sentence.
Right.
So it's shocking. I don't know.
And it wasn't the Nation Media Group that he shared this with. I mean, he speaks of some media house.
He doesn't remember who was there, so I'm not sure. Also
I mean, sharing the SGR contract, you need to know. You probably need to have a contract to hand over a contract just to follow up on who has it in particular. But yes, these are stories that you've done, and I'm sure we'll keep getting that from the Daily Nation team, the Sunday Nation team, the Business Daily team. Julie, I want to hear your sentiments when you hear this go on. Mistrust definitely continues.
Yeah, it does, right from the top, which is why people who encounter problems on the ground are very angry, because these are the kind of responses that you get from the leadership. You don't have to read the contract, it's a standard contract. Kind of like a flippant attitude about the whole thing, whereas he should be walking people through that contract clause by clause to explain what's happening, how much money it was, what the conditions were, did it include immigration of how many, whatever number of Chinese people. All those things should be disclosed to the public, but they are not at that level. And then at the practical level, people are interacting on the ground and trading with Chinese nationals or whatever it is they're doing with any other national. They encounter problems which do not match up with the narrative from the top. So this is why the whole story of perception is so strong, because we're not getting the answers, and yet we can see things going wrong.
Right.
So I know I blame the government and our parenting authority, as my friend Clay Muganda calls it, a lot, but really this problem can be solved if they just told us what was happening.
Yes.
However bad or good it is.
As an economist, Soni Watima, what would you really want to get your hands on in terms of this particular contract? There's one thing getting it and digesting it for Kenyans, not saying that they're not able to do it themselves. Many are, in fact, even explain it to us. But as an economist, what are you really keen on?
I think the main thing for any economist will be that what is the economic viability of that project, the financial bit of it, the economic part of
Initially, when he said, he mentioned July that he said we'd break even?
July 2018.
2018, which is a year later after the launch.
So those are the details.
Did you buy that?
No. For such a huge investment, mega infrastructure project, you don't break even that easily.
Yes.
And the biggest issue is that not even about breaking even, it's about what kind of a risk did Kenyan government take, which is the taxpayer who takes that risk, and what are the risks that the Chinese took. So what was the share of that risk? Did we take too much risk for that project, and is it worth it as an economic project? We've been given figures around, but we are able not to verify if we don't see the contract itself. So those are the main things that we look at: the economic viability, financial, environmental, and all the other things, and the risks that Kenyan government took. Because we've heard there was a sovereign immunity being lifted on specific assets in Kenya. Those are the risks that we're talking about. What are the kind of the terms that we're given in this thing? Those are the risks that we're talking about. But since when you hear the CS talks about, and this is the tragedy about this government, is that we put a very good constitution about opaqueness, about transparency, about engaging in public participation and kind of a thing. But what I wonder is that when guys in government and heading dockets seem not to understand or read from the same constitution that every one of us reads from.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's really quick comment on this as we close on this matter, because we need to get to what Uhuru said yesterday, and this is now off business and into politics. I know it's not your desk, but you definitely have something to say about that. When the CS talks about this particular contract either going out or not, there's the question about, is there something that they're definitely going to be hiding that the Kenyans should not see?
I think that's the correct thing to see, because when you look at somebody tells, I gave out the contract, who I don't know, but you should not read it. It tells you that there's something that is there that you should not read it, in fact.
Okay.
There's something wrong in that contract. And that's the biggest tragedy that we have, that people think that for the short term, they might hide that contract, but this is a long-term thing. This project will be there forever.
Yes.
Even after this government, those are the questions that will remain forever, and somebody has to answer.
Okay.
And so it's a bigger conversation that is not going anytime soon.
All right, real quick.
Yeah, real quick. Out of the fact that the CS says this is not it's not extraordinary. That's, if I interpret what he's saying, I can lightly say that if you want to know it has extraordinary clauses, you need to ask Magufuli, the president of Tanzania, if you saw his rant about a port being built and then very crazy terms being put in there. So even the coming to the opaqueness, there's so much to hide. And that's why there's a clause in the contract that says it cannot be disclosed. Look at the figures we've got for revenues for the freight business. We got 10.3 billion, 2018. And then come the leading economic indicators for March. The Kenya National Bureau of Statistics now says 5.7 billion, suddenly.
Yes.
I even talked to the director, asked him, so what's going on? He said, we got the figures from Kenya Railways. And we are also asking them, where did it come from? Now, for a project of that magnitude, when you cut 4 billion out of it suddenly like that, that's where the problem is. I mean, there's a quote I wrote in my last story about the operational contract, which I got from a professor in Colombia. He's called Professor Howard French. He has written a lot about China, Africa. He says, opaque contracts never yield transparent results.
Exactly.
There's nothing good in an opaque contract. Why is it opaque in the first place?
Yeah.
That's the thing. You don't expect something done in darkness and kept there to yield nice things in light.
In any way, can we say in their defense, the Chinese actually put a clause there that, no disclosure, non-disclosure. They're doing business that the Kenyan government signed to.
I suppose.
For sure, I agree with you.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with you, because we don't expect the Chinese to negotiate for us.
Yeah, they're doing it for themselves.
When we get to the
best terms for
table, it's us and them.
Yes,
then
and the government is representing us.
So we've been let down by the people who went to that table.
Okay.
Yes.
Is the government representing us really? Or is the government representing itself? But either way, I think from the beginning, the standard gauge railway was more expensive than it ever should have been. There was the proposal to upgrade it's called the single gauge, the old railway, the Lunatic Express. They dismissed that out of hand.
Which is what Uganda has gone for.
Yes, but now they're bringing it up again because they don't have any more money to take the railway to Malaba, I think. So the whole nature of how it was done was wrong. It's fruit of a poisonous tree right from the beginning.
Okay.
So it's no surprise that we're now being told there are clauses that we cannot see, because everything looked shifty from the get-go.
Very good.
So now we have to live with this railway elephant. Go ahead.
There's one point that you asked about Chinese opaqueness. I think one of the main things that China-Africa relations that everyone is talking about and the critique about it is that China has been opaque in its business, especially government-to-government business in Africa.
Yes.
It's not a Kenyan thing, it's an African thing. And you look at the standards of investments internationally, you look at World Bank, you look at IMF, and bigger players within that sector. One of the main things about transparency that you're able to buy public confidence in projects. And one of the main things that Chinese has not complied to in those standards is opaqueness and confidentiality of projects when they're coming into the taxpayers' docket. So that's the biggest problem, that it's not a Kenyan problem, but the problem with the Africa and China relations is about opaqueness on government contracts. And it's something that they may not work around it today, but it's hurting their interest in Africa.
Well, Magufuli seems to have learned the lesson.
It's quick one. I have a lot to talk about this loan, so forgive me for adding too many things. But you know, when countries sign deals, then it's a partnership, okay? So speaking about Africa, African leaders are happy about this no strings attached kind of carrot being dangled on them. But the question is that a good partner, the one who does not attach strings? Go down to Kimathi Street tomorrow morning, Mark, carry 10,000 and stop anyone and tell them, I'm going to lend you 10,000. I don't know where you work. I don't care whether you'll return it. I don't care where you're putting it, but I'm just lending it. And then watch their reaction. I don't think they're happy to pick
They're going to raise the money and see if it's legitimate, or think that I'm dumping off the old notes to them in exchange.
So a good partner must be concerned.
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. And this is something that, a conversation that definitely continues. Questions that will remain until we get that particular contract and even details out from it. And I believe we can expect that from the team here from Nation Media Group, with Edwin being one of the team members there. Now,